Thank you so much for joining us, Ajit. How are you today?
I'm very excited to be here, Lynn.
Excellent. I met Ajit through A-Fest initially, and then got to know him even better through an EverCoach summit that he and his team had put on through Mindvalley. This was in September of this year. And he had taken the stage and told us his story, and there was just quit after strategic quit after strategic quit, and they were big time quits. They were like, I thought this was what I wanted to do and realized it was different. And I thought, this is so valuable for my audience. So I am ever so grateful that you are on today to share your story. So Ajay, if you could please take us back to where you were, let's say, when you were developing the thoughts of what your dream job would be and working up
hmm
toward it.
hmm
What was going
So,
on there?
so firstly, my dream job was to run this company called Mindvalley, and the reason why that was my dream job is because as I was going through life as a young kid, when I joined the company as an intern about a decade ago now, uh, what I had imagined at that time, it was a small operation, 10 people running out of a bungalow, not really a very big company, maybe 12 people, whatever the size was, really small company. And as I joined the company, as I joined the organization, I just saw what's possible because it was changing my life to start with, right? So I was like, all right, there's a great possibility that lies with this company. And so my dream became to be the CEO of the company. One of the things that we do at the company is called three most important questions. You can Google that and you'll see what that means. And in that three most important questions, you share what is the big thing that you want to do. It's one of the goals. It's kind of a goal setting type of exercise. And so I went ahead, and one of my top things that I wanted to do was to be able to be the CEO of Mindvalley, right? And this is a young kid, like I was 24 when I joined the company, saying, hey, I want to be the CEO of this company. Even if it was small, I knew one day it will be big. And so I went ahead and I pursued that vision for about 7 years. And finally, I got there. Finally, I did all the roles that you can do in a company. I did the launch manager, the advertising person, the technical person, the whatever you can do. Basically, mastered all these different fields, created process for these different fields, got success in these different fields, eventually leading up to getting to become the CEO of the company. But what I had not imagined was when you chase a dream like that, you get so lost in the idea and the fascination of it that you forget that that goal that you're setting out is just that, a goal, and is not going to necessarily look at your, like, you are fascinated by the goal, you're in the fascination of the goal, and you forget that it looks like something and it feels like something else, right? You feel like very different, or you must feel like very different when you're doing that goal, or when you're finally at the place you really want to be. And so as I was going through, I was preparing for this role, I was studying hard, I was learning hard, I was working really hard, trying to get to this thing, right? We all kind of chase this one thing that we think is going to be the ultimate thing, and then we're going to do it for the rest of our lives. That's what I thought about this particular title. And I come from a background where I grew up in a household of 23 other people. So I come from very humble beginnings in India, in a city called Jaipur. And because of those beginnings, I was always somebody who was driven for abundance. I was somebody who wanted to make good money for my family, for myself, to be able to get outside that house and be able to move my parents outside the house and so forth. And because of that, I was very driven in that context as well. So finally, as I was closing in, I was becoming the leader of the organization. I was seeing the financial abundance attached to it. We had grown Mindvalley tremendously in these 7 years. It had gone from a 12-person operation to almost about at that time, we were about 120, 150 people already at the company in about 7 years or so. So it was becoming a force already. It was already a force already as I led the organization now, only to realize that, sometimes you have a chase the dream and you have a fascination for that dream, but when you are there, you realize that it's not necessarily exactly how you imagined it to be. So that was my truth at that time. What had happened was it was exactly what I hoped it would be in context of the work that I was doing, but it wasn't same in the context of the life that I was living. So there were two different things. So I had chased this goal to create a life for me, but in the process, I forgot to make a living out of it. Like, I had forgotten to pump life into the life that I was building. So I was chasing a standard of living, if I may, but I wasn't chasing a standard of life. So what happened in the process was I became this person who was, from the outside, would look tremendously successful, tremendously accomplished. I was young and crushing it, leading one of the most profound organizations that is pushing the envelope on when it comes to personal development, personal growth, and creating a better world for the future. They're pushing all of that. Seems right, but internally it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right in my bones. It didn't feel right in my spirituality. And it wasn't because of the work, but it was because everything else that surrounded work. My life, my health, my relationships, my schedules, what I was doing on a daily basis, how I was living on a daily basis, what I was feeling on a daily basis. It was all incongruent. It was almost like I was paying for this title, paying for this living through my life. So I was paying it through a process of me creating suffering and everything else in my life versus what it should be, I believe, which is a congruent life. Like I was enjoying my work and I was enjoying my life, but that's how it should be. At least that was my standard that I wanted to live off my life, but that wasn't the standard I was living. And that was what led me up to becoming the CEO and then going, maybe I need to reevaluate that.
Yeah. Our mutual friend Jason Goldberg just had a transmission from Bali on Instagram yesterday saying that the ultimate thing that you have been chasing, when you get it, is never going to feel as good as the chase did. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that, right? Like that entire time you had this goal and you were probably enjoying progressing from, you said you started as an intern, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like to have an intern think, okay, this is going to happen. By the way, the video has stopped. Can you still hear me? I'm going to pause until... Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
You froze for me. So
yeah, likewise, you froze too. That's okay. I'm going to go back to saying you started off as an intern and you made it all the way to CEO, which to think as an intern, you make this audacious goal. You dreamt huge and you made it. It's one feeling to be climbing and progressing, and then you get there and it's not nearly the same feeling, right?
mm-hmm. And it
It,
happens often that you go to a place and you're like, okay, this must be this fascinating idea, this elusive idea, and then you get there and it's not like exactly how you imagined it to be. And that's the difference between having a goal and knowing what it looks like versus having a goal and knowing how it feels like, right?
yeah,
And there's a distinction between that because often we always imagine how our goal looks like. We never really lean into saying what would it feel like to be at that goal, which is why we end up setting up goals which are kind of not really in alignment with what's true to you. It's more in alignment with how you will be accepted in the outside reality, right? So for me being CEO, I was like, all right, I get to say I'm the CEO of the company that I think pushes the envelope, I think is a progressive thing in the world and is creating great waves in the world. And so I get to say, I lead this organization. I've helped build this organization, right? I knew how it looks like. And from the outside, I knew it looked beautiful. It was like, what the hell? This kid has actually made it, right? That's what my family thought. That's what everybody else thought. But I knew how I felt there, right? But I never imagined that until I actually got there and I went, hey, this doesn't feel like how I want me to feel like. For the world, I was still doing great. I had no reason to quit, right? But for me, I was like, this doesn't feel what I want to feel. This doesn't feel like I could keep doing this and I would still continue to get the success in the external world, but it won't feel what I need to feel. And so I had to kind of step out and say, okay, I need to feel different. This is not what I want my life to feel like, even if it looks kind of accurate or wonderful from the outside.
yeah, you just said it right, nail on the head there. You said success to the external world, because true success is completely based on how you feel at the end of the day. And are you happy with how your own life is going, your own goals that may not at all be financial or work related? It may be family, it may be personal development. And you got to that point where, I mean, Mindvalley does so much work in personal development. So you were surrounded by messages of this is how you should feel. And you were there feeling like, nope, this is not how I feel. So
Exactly.
what were some of your first clues, maybe in your body or your mind? Like what started talking to you saying like, oh, this is not necessarily where I need to be?
So when I was, so I took a while to make the decision of actually saying this is not where I want to be, and it started with sleepless nights. That was the first thing that really happened. Is I it wasn't like I'm always somebody who works when I need to work, that type of thing. I don't have too many hassles around that. And but I was just having increase in anxiety around my life. I just had this insane amount of anxiety and dissatisfaction, even if I had worked that day quite a bit, for example. And that was the first thing, that it was just, I wasn't sleeping, and I had become, I call it borderline alcoholic. I've never really looked at the definition of an alcoholic, but I knew I can't go to sleep if I didn't have my 2 drinks. And I count that as not a place where I ever wanted to be. I didn't want to rely on alcohol or any type of drugs to be able to go to sleep or be able to operate as a person. And that had become me. That had become me, where I was just so much in a place where I needed alcohol to go to sleep, and I needed to. I had, of course, not really built relationship at that time. I wasn't. I had grown distant with my friends, people who were my childhood buddies. We had been friends for like 10, 15 years at that point, and we were really close. And I would just not have the time to call them or check in on them. And as I started to kind of realize and kind of start to see, is like, what is happening with me? What is it that is causing all of this? Because I love my friends and I want to hang out with them, but I'm not calling I was calling my parents out of obligation almost. It was almost like, oh, I should call them once a week because otherwise it looks bad. Like I wasn't doing it because I wanted to do it, right? And it was, I was like, there's something else that's wrong. It's not that I don't love my parents. It's not that I don't want to hang out with my friends, but there's something else that's blocking me. And I realized that was because of how I was, like I said, I was paying for this living by my life. I was actually literally paying through everything, every other resource, every other energy that I had in my life. And I said, I will just invest it all in this career. I will invest it all in this one thing. And that realization kind of changed me. That realization, as it started with not being able to sleep, then it went into really evaluating. And this was one of the calls that I was doing with my parents. Again, one of those things that I would do weekly type of thing. I was like, it feels really wrong that I kind of say, oh shit, I should call my parents. Right? Not that I want to call my parents. I should call my parents. Right? And I was like, hey, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't feel like, that doesn't, like it doesn't resonate with me. These are my parents, right? And then as slowly I realized that there was one of my friends who was in a tremendous amount of distress, and they didn't reach out. And this was one of my childhood buddies. And I was like, and I only realized it like a few months later when I was traveling. And I was like, because then we actually met physically, and I was like, why didn't you reach out? Like, bro, because you were never there. And I was like, this is not what I want to be. This is not me. This is not honest to me. This is not true to me. And so those were the clues that I kind of got. And it kind of is a little bit hard for me to tap into that again. But those were, many of these clues were dropped at all points of time. I had sleeping issues. I had my relationship issues. I had my own I was with someone at that time, and that relationship also wasn't really what I wanted from my relationship in a way. And all of those clues kind of kept dropping one after another around my life. And so I knew I had to change and shake things up in a way. And one of the things that I knew that I had to, and it was the hardest thing, because it was something that not only I had worked really hard for, I knew that this was one of like really, really good works I can do in the world, because I really love the company. I love the people I work with. I love the work that I do in some way, but it's just taking everything else from me. So I had to ask a different question. I had to challenge myself in a different way. I had to concern myself in a different way. And that's what led me to make that decision.
I appreciate that. That's really valuable, especially the part about how you noticed, this was a little bit back there, but you noticed so many things weren't in line with who you were. And then one of the things was that you're reaching for alcohol. And first off, it takes one thing to notice that. And then a lot of people at that point just say, how do I quit drinking alcohol? They just see, okay, I have picked up a quote unquote bad habit. How do I quit the bad habit? You don't quit the bad habit. You quit the thing that's making you reach for the bad habit.
Yeah, that's so true. That is very true. Because it's a numbing process, right? Like alcohol, drugs, all these things are numbing processes. if you're addicted to them. If you do it occasionally, it's fine, because then you're doing it for whatever entertainment and whatever that is your drive at that moment. But if you're doing it consistently and you're doing it repeatedly, is because you want to feel something else than what you're feeling, right? So it's either a numbing process, or because you're really numb is why it's an elevating process, but it's a process to feel different than what you're feeling today or right now. And that is getting you to create addictive behaviors, a behavior where you're reliant on something else. And it's not only drugs and alcohol. Addiction is across in many different ways. It could be addiction to sex. It could be addiction to many different things. And you just want to be careful about if you're getting addicted to certain things because you want to feel different. And if that's the dialogue that's coming up where you want to feel different, maybe you want to see how you want to feel and how you can create that without support from other things, like, because it is possible within yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, numbing or excitement, either way, you're self-medicating symptoms without treating the actual disease. And the disease is your stressed out life, or it's a toxic relationship, or whatever isn't working for you, whatever is making you feel like, who am I? Who am I that doesn't want to call my family as regularly as I used to, or who's not there for my friends? Like, all of those things are just clues that something much deeper is out of alignment.
Yeah.
So you got to this point, and then you had a very difficult decision to make. Can you take us through a little bit? Like you said, it's a few years ago at this point. So if you can remember back how you actually made the process, because again, you're in your dream job. Everybody else thinks, wow, you have made it. This is an incredible success. How did you go through the actual process of deciding you were going to quit?
So when I started to realize that there is something that's off, I didn't know what was off. That's always the first thing, right? You don't really know what's wrong. You always think maybe it's a addiction habit and you just need to get rid of the habit, or it's just you're not making effort towards certain things. And if you make effort, you will fix it. Like those are usually the first responses. And those were my first responses as well, is to go, okay, now maybe it's just a challenge right now. And I've solved everything, I can solve this one too. So that was my first things that I tried to do, is to really go, okay, why am I drinking? So let's try not to drink, but then I would have sleepless nights. So like, okay, there's something off here. Let me make an extra effort to call. But again, I would keep falling back into the same trap. And it was a couple of months where I constantly kept going back into the cycle, which made me realize that there is something else that fundamentally needs to shift, right? And quitting being CEO of the company was one of the things that I quit. I'd also quit many other things in the process. But the realization started with saying that I need to reevaluate my life if I want to continue to live the way I want to live, instead of just living the way how I made it. So I can continue to do this. Like, if you would ask my mother, she's like, what is wrong with you, right? Because she would be like, she's so wrapped into the reality of how the external sees to us, that she always like, why would you quit something that is so good and you're making so much progress? What is wrong with you? Would be her dialogue. But else my dialogue was, there is something that is not working, and so I have to reevaluate everything. And when it came down to reevaluating everything, I started to find things that are taking away from me as a human being, as a person, as a personality, as who I am, true to myself. And that got me to start making decisions towards different areas of my life that I wanted to quit. And I not quit, but more like change. And as I said, I need to change that. Some of them turned out to be, I need to quit. It's not possible to change really, because there's just no alignment. It's just something that, it's not going to work out. And even if it's a hard thing to do, it is the right thing to do. And it may look wrong in the moment, but I know looking back, this would be the thing that would be a turning point for me as a human being. And that was kind of the process of it. So it started by looking at as things that are causing this discomfort in my life and this challenge in my life and creating addictive behaviors in my life. And then to reevaluate each one of those areas to be able to go, okay, what is it that I need to do to be able to create a new life, right? But that doesn't stop there, because once you know, okay, these are the things that you need to change, you need to figure out how to change them, right? Because you can't, my personal philosophy is you never should burn your bridges. Don't burn your bridges. That's my philosophy. I don't believe in, like, I know there are a lot of romantic stories of a lot of entrepreneurs that we keep hearing, oh, they quit their job and they started doing this and they put everything at stake. I don't think that's a very smart thing to do. And what we found through research, not just us, I don't remember the book it was quoted in, but the research was found that entrepreneurs that are successful are not risk takers, they are risk managers, which means that they don't just go out on a limb and say, it'll all work out if I quit my job. They actually build their business as they're doing the job that they're doing so they can fund everything. So they manage the risk versus take the risk. And that kind of is what was true to me at that time, because I had been in the past somebody who had taken the risk and I had quit something and then I suffered tremendously because of that. But then there was a time where this time I was like, no, I need to manage this risk. And so I started asking myself the question of saying, okay, if I will quit this, what is my backup plan? And do I have a backup plan? Because yes, fortunately I had saved up enough that I could have survived a few years. But I also know, knowing myself, that I'm not somebody who can sit on the beach and look at the sky. That's just not me. I will be bored. I will be more unhappy than I'm today if I was just doing that. I can do that for 5 days. But after that, I'll need to do something with my life. Like I'm just a creative person. I need to do things. I like doing things. It doesn't stress me out. It actually excites me. It fuels me, right? So I was like, okay, I know that I need to do something. So I said, okay, let's start making a plan for it. This is where idea of EverCoach was hatched, for example, right? I was like, okay, the thing that I'm very passionate about. So what I'm passionate about is training, learning, coaching. I love this community because they've helped me a lot. I love the work that involves in coaching and training. So I love that too. And then I had built all these skills in building Mindvalley that I was like, I know how to build a business, right? So all these skills, I said, okay, these are the skills that I have. This is the passion that I have. How can I integrate these both, right? So that was my immediate kind of a reaction to saying, okay, if I want to move on, I need to start thinking about something, right? And that gave birth to EverCoach and as an idea. And then we continued to progress on that. And then that was the business solution. I didn't have solutions for my relationship, but I knew that if I create space in my life, I'll be able to at least reimagine them and be able to reconnect in a lot of times. I knew that I will have the space to be able to wonder about my health and see what I want to do with that. I'll be able to access different insights and information from different places to be able to really recreate all of this, just because I have the time space for myself and to be able to reimagine time for that matter. Because one of the big mistakes that I was doing was I wasn't understanding time. I just thought it was about how many hours you put in the work versus thinking about what work you do. Right. So it is again one of those distinctions that you need to understand about time is not about how much time you put into something. Time is about what you're doing with the time. Right. It's easier said than actually done. And most of us don't consider what we're doing with our time. We just put in more time into things. So that reconsideration also changed my reality because I was like, okay, let me reimagine my time as well. Which all of these things happen as a counter effect of me saying, if I first figure out how do I have access of time so I can even think about these things. So initially, I didn't have the reconsideration of time. It was more about, I will consider all these other things as I create more time in my life. And I had created some cushion for myself to be able to sustain myself for a year, maybe even 2. At that time, I was living in a different part of the world as well. So it was even less expensive for me to be able to really enjoy. Plus, I had considered that if I really need to take a break, I can move away to a country like Thailand or Bali, where it's significantly cheaper, but it has the creative space for me to be able to think and wonder and recreate my life. So I had considered all these options. So I knew I don't have to stress out in that moment, even if I quit in the moment, but I didn't quit in the moment. I started to build something that I was excited about, I was passionate about, and also fit my skills, the skills that I'd already developed. So I said, okay, this is a good integration of me wanting to do something that's positive, and it's also a good integration of something that I already know, right? I have skill sets around it. Then I went ahead and I found partnership around it because I was like, okay, I love the company. It's not that I hate my job. That's not why I quit. It wasn't that I was hating what I was doing. It wasn't fitting my life. So I said, what if I just propose this idea to this company that I already run, kind of? And so I reached out to Vishen, who was my founder in the company, who was the founder in the company, said, would you like to co-found this company? Right. And so we co-founded, which we now call Mindvalley Teach, is available at evercoach.com, which is the brand that we talked about earlier in this conversation. And we said, okay, let's invest in this. And as we were investing in that, I also said, I want to move on and I don't want to do what I'm doing right now. Now, it takes a little while when you're playing a role as like a CEO of a company, and you can't just say, I quit and you quit. So it took us about 6 months for me to really transition out. So that happened after that. For 6 months, I was just involved in the company while I was starting to kind of look into EverCoach, starting to build it a little bit, started to build a team around it, get my first 2 employees at that time. Just that small little space, but I was also transitioning out. So my sense of responsibility and my actual responsibilities were reducing on a daily basis because, everybody knew kind of that it's transitioning out. And they didn't know immediately. They knew like 2 months after I was actually transitioning out, because we wanted to again give them the time, space to be able to really manage the expectations and so forth. So all that happened at that time, and that helped me moving out. And that's what I meant by don't burn your bridges, because I didn't just simply walk in one day into the company and said I quit and moved out and then wondered what will I do. I thought about what I would do when I quit before I actually quit. So that's kind of my perspective to quitting anything. Is I don't think you should drop that quit ever. You should plan for it and then quit. And I think that manages risk a lot more than you just quitting everything. Even if you have a big resource of money that you've saved up, you still want to reconsider just quitting, because just quitting will create a lot of space in your life. But that much space can also be very, it could be very pressure. It could be a lot of pressure. It could be a lot of anxiety, because now you don't know what to do with your day. And all of a sudden you have lost the sense of meaning. You've lost the sense of work. You've lost the sense of where your reality is going to be. So you want to give your brain and your soul a little bit time to adjust to the new reality.
Yeah, for everybody out there, I swear I didn't pay Ajit any money to say any of this, that you completely just perfectly described the strategic quitting process that we talk about all the time on Quit Happens, and that Quitting by Design, my book, covers. I'm just going to try to pull out of your story all of the different points that were beautiful. Number one, when you're realizing, okay, this isn't for me, whatever this new person is that I've become that is out of alignment, and you kind of described the quitting snowball effect, which once you realize, all right, this isn't right and this isn't right, like you said, it creates space one by one. And a lot of times there at the root is a mindset quit. And it may be quitting the mindset that having this relationship or this job that looks good to the outside world is the most important thing. And then you change to like, all right, no, what do I really want? A lot of people go through that. Were you in your later 20s when this happened? What was your age?
Early 30s.
Early 30s, right.
30, yeah, 31, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because our 20s were very ego-driven, and a lot of us, we're trying to prove ourselves. What do we look to the outside world? And then once we get to that place, we're like, oh, this is not what it's about. Let's re-examine our values. And then you did a brilliant thing, which is, okay, I realize this specific job doesn't make me feel like it should, but there are plenty of good things about it. And luckily you work for Mindvalley, but I want everybody else out there to realize that other companies, it's worth a try to do what you did. Examine what you're passionate about, what your skill set is, where they intersect, and then go to your boss and say, look, I, as an employee, or even as a even more so, you're a CEO of a transformational company. You want to be feeling in a transformational space and not like feeling, who am I? I'm out of alignment. So you go to Vishen, you present him. Vishen is like you said, the founder, and you say, I'm feeling out of alignment, but I think this is where my strengths and passions lie. And he was able to work with you on that. And that's what I think a lot of people maybe don't have the courage, or they don't realize that it's possible to do. And I want people to realize, try that. Like in strategic quitting, pick out what parts of your job aren't working and what parts are, and what you do like. And is there a way to pivot within your company, within your job? That's so much easier than starting from scratch. Yeah. Like you said, yeah, you already had the resource of Mindvalley behind you. Why not work with them? You still love them as an employer. That's the difference between quitting a job because your employer is bad and loving the job, or quitting a job because the employer is great, but maybe the job was just too much pressure. And that's why it's really important in quitting to decide which part of it isn't working, because only throw out that part, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Like you don't have to, like we said, you don't have to drop dead, say I'm quitting right now. Consider what are the options that you have. If your boss is not open-minded, and a lot of companies' bosses are not open-minded, then still evaluate where you are at. Sometimes there's an opportunity that might open within the company in a different dimension with a different boss, and maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe sometimes, and the bosses who are aware and are good bosses, they actually do consider your vision, because that's the one thing that separates a good leader from a bad leader. A good leader always sees what's your vision as one of my team members that I can support, because I know I have a bigger buy-in and a lot more response from you and a lot more commitment from you and a lot better quality work from you if I align with your vision of life for yourself. And if I am working with you to create that vision a reality for you. And a bad boss or not a very good leader would go, I don't care. I'm just fulfilling my own personal vision. So if your boss is decent, they will do that. If they're not, it's fine. You might find that boss within the company. You might find a similar job in a different thing. And that is very important, to actually find an aligned boss, I think, generally, especially if you're looking not to start a business like me, but actually to get a more consistent job where you feel more aligned and more excited, is to not only look for a job and a title, but look for the person that you're working with. It's not always about what title you get and how much they pay. Sometimes, like I did when I started to join the company, it wasn't a successful company. It became successful while I did the work that I did for the company. It's true for you too. You're smart, you're intellectual, you can make the company successful while working with the company. You just have to know if you align with the person that you're working with or not. So look for that as well.
Yeah, definitely a company culture and a company leader that support you is just invaluable. Don't compare two jobs side by side just by the bottom line of what you would make, when that company culture can be fostering or it can be toxic. That's going to be a big difference in your happiness at the end of the day. The happiness is not based on your bottom line. Like you said, once you had 2 years worth of reserve and that wasn't enough, that's clearly that it has nothing to do with that. I mean, you have to have enough for your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but at the end of the day, once that's fulfilled, you have to be fulfilled. And you brought up another thing in your story, which was space. And when you don't have alignment, whatever it is out of alignment tends to take up a disproportionate amount of mental space and energy, at least in my experience. And so when you're doing something that's slightly out of alignment, like for example, most people who are listening to this know I recently quit training martial arts. And the actual training was like an hour and a half a week, which sounds like who doesn't have an hour and a half to do something? But the mental space it took up thinking, oh, I have to train and I should be getting better and I should be doing this and that for capoeira and I shouldn't be training anything else. But that was taking up so much mental space, way more than the actual space of an hour and a half. And mental energy, which if you're trying to make transitions and trying to do what's best for yourself, kind of wasting that mental energy on something that isn't in alignment, even though it takes a small amount of time, is something don't discount how, okay, I'm out of alignment in this one small area, but I can tolerate it. No, like you said, it's probably taking up more space than the actual hours. It's not the hours that you put in a thing, exactly how you said, it's what you're doing with those hours. And if what you're doing with those hours weighs on you entirely more than just the 1 hour it's there, then that's another thing that should probably be reevaluated. And I just have to ask this because you brought it up before we move on. How did your parents take the news? Because you said, oh, my mom was so proud of this. And that what was that conversation like? Because many of us, not me, my parents are, they do not care what I do, but I'd say they're in the gross minority of parents. And I know there's a lot of parental pressure on people. So how did that conversation go?
So one thing that I learned early in my life was that everybody has their reality, and you need to operate from yours, irrespective of what anybody else thinks, and be aware that sometimes they will take the longest time to understand something that you may understand very easily. And so I don't even inform my parents until I've actually done something. And the reason for that is simple. My dad is actually very understanding because he trusts that I will do whatever seems right to me, right? But my mom is an overly concerned mom, like mothers are, right? Sometimes they're just overly concerned and they feel like we've definitely lost the way, right? And that's just mom's love, right? But at the same point in time, I knew that she would get increasingly panicked if I told her that I was about to quit what I was doing and which I was really successful at and so forth. And then I was about to quit my relationship right after that, right? Or right around that, right? So I knew that if I would bring that awareness to her, she would think I am just going crazy, and she would go crazy thinking I'm going crazy, right?
Yes.
So for me, I knew that her perspective, or from her perspective, she wouldn't be able to see it or understand it right then. but she will be able to see and understand it if I had made some progress towards that before I informed her about it. So it was the understanding of saying, I don't need to overly communicate when there is no need to overly communicate, right? There was no need for me. They couldn't do anything in context of me doing my job or not doing my job. They have actually, they don't even understand what Mindvalley does even till today. They still don't understand what I do, right? So they have no role to really play in context of my work, but what they do care for how I feel, right? So if I'm feeling better, if I'm communicating more effectively, if I'm showing up as a happy person every day, that's more valuable to them versus what am I doing professionally, right? So I kind of operated from that place, and I said, okay, I don't need to tell everything and every detail to them. So I only informed them once I had quit already, and I had already started working on a new project. So I had already, when I was talking to them, I was already saying, yeah, and I'm starting this new company, and it's in partnership with Mindvalley, and this is what we're going to do, and so forth, and it's already getting traction. So now then their concern is a lot less. They're like, okay, he's starting a business, right? But he has made businesses successful in the past. It's not a big deal. So the concern is immediately taken away, and the spotlight is not on that I'm about to quit my job. The spotlight is on what am I creating, right? So my conversation was slightly different, and I hedge those conversations usually whenever it is, because I know that everybody's world is different, everybody's perspective is different. For my family, being an entrepreneur wasn't a smart idea, right? In India, recently, it has become a cool thing to be an entrepreneur, but in the past, it was the thing that you did when you became unsuccessful at all studies. It was like the backup that you do. It's basically meant you're not smart enough is why you are an entrepreneur, right? For the greatest time in India. Now entrepreneurship is cool everywhere, but at that time it wasn't. And because it wasn't, if I would have said I'm starting a business, they would be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Right. So, but by the time I was quitting this particular thing, I had built companies in the past. So while in partnership with Mindvalley or outside. And so there was a certain level of success that I already had. So I was like, no, I'm quitting this, but I'm starting this company. And so I put the spotlight on that. And so they were okay with that. So it wasn't that big concern. They were more concerned when I was quitting my relationship because they thought I will be single forever. Because that's how Indians think. Because like, you'll be single and miserable. Like, I will not be miserable. I might be single for all my life. I don't care, because that wasn't my priority at that time. My priority was myself. But I was like, it doesn't matter if I'm single all my life. I will definitely not be miserable. And that's why I'm making this decision of quitting on these things that I know are not in alignment with me.
Yeah, I appreciate your candor in sharing that, because that's a lot of people go through those parental pressures, and that is definitely a good option. Don't give so many details. If they're not asking specific details, just kind of on a need to know basis, because the alternative, I think, like you said, is if you had told her, then that panic would have been projected onto you.
Exactly.
And really
And then
ups
there would
the
be
ante.
calls every day. Oh, why are you doing this? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Oh, what do you do? What do you learn? But it's not required. They can't help it. The only thing they can do in the process is worry about it. And why would you want that? It makes no sense.
Absolutely. No, I love that. That's need to know basis is, I think, very good in many instances. I love that very much. Okay. So from EverCoach, everything's going well. You start the company, you end up writing a book with your now wife. And then recently you have written another book. Can you tell me what the impetus was for that book?
So the book that I wrote with my wife is called The Book of Coaching. That was more in alignment with what we do at EverCoach, which is help coaches, trainers, educators to become better at what they do and also be able to help build their businesses. So that's kind of what is in alignment with that. And that was very specific to a very specific set of people. But during this course of me discovering myself, I realized two things that I didn't know about me before. One was that I love writing. And that was my really main passion more than building businesses. My building businesses is my skill. What I really like to do is write. And I used to write when I was a kid. I had then stopped doing it. And then I was like, okay, maybe I want to do more of this because I actually enjoy doing it. I lose track of time. I really love doing it, that type of stuff. So I write all my stuff myself, and I was writing that. And in the process, I was also coaching people, which is also one more thing that I like: coaching, consulting, being able to help other entrepreneurs really be able to build their businesses. And in that process, I found increasingly the more and more entrepreneurs I met, they were living the same life that I was living as a CEO, right? So I was like, okay, so this is a pattern. Entrepreneurs tend to continue to do what they're doing because they think they can't quit. in a reality, right? They've started, the business is their identity. Not that I was saying you need to quit, but you have better ways to organize your business in a way where you don't do things where you feel miserable about doing them, right? Or the structure is not really supportive of you, or the structure is not really in alignment with you. And so what we did is I said, okay, so let's look at this whole dimension of what is it that is causing entrepreneurs to be in the state that they're in. And of course, I was also going through a personal journey for myself at that time to rediscover and then reimagine how business is done. And in that process, I realized that there were certain perspectives that if you shift those perspectives, you'll be able to create a new reality. And that's what was Live Big. So I was trying to figure out how to live my own life in a big way. There was no intention to write a book. In the process, ended up consulting, coaching other companies, realized the same principles apply to other people as well, or perspectives apply to other people as well. And then decided to document it in context of saying, hey, you can grow your companies. You don't have to slog 18-hour days, 20-hour days. That's a myth that is being told around. There's ways to optimize your passion, your purpose, your alignment, yourself to be able to create a really powerful company and a really powerful business for yourself. And that's what really Live Big became.
I love that. There are two fantastic parts that I want to pull out of that have been impactful. Well, one was really impactful for me when I heard you say it back at the summit in September, is you told us your personal schedule, and you are not Gary Vee-ing it. You are not working 18 hours a day. You are working a very compact period of time, a specific period of time on a specific set of days. And I have done the same thing. And I thought, thank goodness somebody else is I don't need the world stamp of okay, but you see so many of these entrepreneur messages that if you're not hustling 24/7, you're doing it wrong. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it my way because I know my health is important and my health does not let me do 18-hour days. And frankly, probably most people's doesn't, if you're really being honest with yourself and truly sleeping 8 hours and all of those things. So I love that you emphasize to entrepreneurs, no, let's work smarter, not harder and longer. Yeah. And the other thing you said in there was that so many entrepreneurs end up making their business their identity. And so that if it fails, they are failures.
Yeah.
And that makes it so hard to quit quitting is often it's like often a presumptive thing. What'd you say?
So you don't even have to quit. Sometimes you just have to reimagine everything that you're doing and be able to be okay. It's like how your personal growth happens, right? You change as a person when you grow as a person. Why does your business have to be exactly the way it is right now? Why can't your business grow? And not only grow in context of revenue, but in the way it operates. I've found increasingly, and this has been consistent with my clients, and this will be consistent with people who will read this book, is that the more I get my clients to work less and less, greater their business grows. So I've consistently found that if my clients work less number of hours, the greater their business is, the larger revenue they generate, the better teams they have, the more peace of mind they have, and better relationships that they have. My companies that I work with, they tend to grow by 30 to 100% year on year while reducing their time by almost half or more. So if somebody's working 8-hour days, they end up working 4-hour days, and their companies grow by anywhere between 30% to 100% year on year. And it's the same principles that I talk about in the book. And so it's a myth that you have to work really, really hard. What you have to really think about is how and what are you doing in those hours. I also believe that Gary Vaynerchuk, as much as he's an amazing person, it's a part of the story that you see. I don't think he works that hard. Because he won't be able to be energetic if he was actually doing 18-hour days. Because it's not your special DNA or whatever, unless you're on cocaine or something stupid like that. You can't do that. As a human being, you need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to work out, you need to do all the things. And honestly, here is what is the truth about social media, and we got to get this clear. If I put up a video today and I say hustle hard, it doesn't mean I do that 24/7. It simply means that when I work hard. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So somebody's 30 seconds of life or 30 seconds of their video is not 24 hours of their life. It's in context of their reality. It's always in context of their reality. He might be counting his work when he's hanging out with his team. Gary Vaynerchuk is not posting on his client's social media. No freaking way. All he's doing is talking to his team most of the time, which might seem like work, and sometimes it does not work for him because that's his interaction point. He's just like, hey, I'm just hanging out, right? He might count him, going with his family to a vacation and then posting a little social media thing saying this is me working. It's not. It's you are having a vacation. You're an entrepreneur. Listen, as an entrepreneur, anybody who has a company, know that your brain will never shut down. That's just the truth of it, especially if you like what you're building, right? It's not going to be like, oh, I'm in my downtime and I will not let any business idea pass through my brain. That's not going to happen. Let's be smart about this. We are human beings. If an idea, best ideas come when you're actually not doing anything, by the way. It's called default mode of the brain. It's scientifically seen, proven. Like, it's you put your brain on default, which means you do the most mundane things like folding laundry, and you will have the best ideas for your business. So yeah, your downtime is the most precious thing you can do for your business, for example, right? Now, do you count that as work or not? That's up to you. But it's not work. You got an idea, you wrote it down on your phone, and you got it back to folding laundry, if that's what you were doing, right? So let's be mindful of people's social media versus their life, because it's not true most of the time. And it's not because they're trying to lie to you or anything like that, but they're trying to show you a version that is inspiring for you, right? So it's inspiring to hear, oh, I hustle hard, I work hard. Yeah, but it's not inspiring looking at him, just sitting down and typing away. Or it's not fun. Would you enjoy watching Gary Vaynerchuk just sitting idly?
Right.
No, there's nothing to watch. It's like, why the hell would he put up that video, right? But what is exciting? Him walking towards something, him being in New York, him posting on this, him saying hustle hard. No, you're not. It's not every minute of his life doesn't look like that. And if it does, good on him. It doesn't mean it has to look on you, right? Not all of us are wired the same way. And honestly, not all of us have or need to be wired in the same way. Fine, Gary Vaynerchuk has a $200 million company. You know what? Warren Buffett is a multi-billionaire and he doesn't work hard. He really doesn't. And he says that. He's like, I go to my work, I do a couple of hours, I go back home. He's in the same office, same house, same team forever now. He's way richer than Gary Vaynerchuk, and he doesn't hustle hard, right? Bill Gates is not hustling hard, right? They're all having a great time with their life, and they're living great lives, and they're creating great value in the world. They build better companies than Gary. You don't have to slog yourself to your deathbed. You can enjoy yourself. You can create great products. You can have a good life, and you can have a family life, and you can love on people, and you can create great companies. It is not exclusive. It's not binary. It's not this versus that. You don't have to make that choice. You can have it all. It's been proven again and again and again by different entrepreneurs. Don't fall for social comparison. It's a stupid thing you can do.
That's a great place to wrap this up. Quit falling for social comparison and quit hustling yourself to death. Those are great messages for the probably very heavily entrepreneur-based audience that I have at this point. Where can people, I have pre-bought the book. I'm very excited to have it come. Where can other people by the time this episode comes out, your book will be out. So where can they grab one?
Just go to livebigthebook.com, LIVEBIGTHEBOOK, livebigthebook.com, and you will find multiple ways to order the book. It's also available at the nearest store that you have in the United States. If you're watching it internationally, then just go to livebigthebook.com and you should be able to find something like that.
Thank you so much for sharing so many great concepts with us. This was just invaluable, and thank you for taking time. Ajit has a little new one at home, so I really appreciate you taking some time away from the family to chat with us and pass on all of this knowledge.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I'm excited. It was really fun conversation to have.
I appreciate that. All right, for everybody else out there, until next time, happy quitting.